Welcome back to episode 22 of the Tech Lounge. I hope you all are having a great Easter, and if you don't celebrate Easter, then I hope you're having a good time anyway, wherever you are in the world. And I'm joined here by Tech Showdown. Kev, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Brian. How about you, man?
Yeah, pretty busy. Pretty busy, but just been relaxed over Easter, eh? Actually had a good few nights sleep and been able to rest a lot, so it's been really good, been relaxed. Getting to the bottom of all this AMD versus Intel stuff. But, the funny thing is, we're going to move, and we'll just talk about that straight away because,
Yeah.
okay, this time around, it's much different, right? We got, like, everywhere you go, there's just, I think it's just a fanboy war. It's world war out there. It's fanboy war. It's crazy. But this is the thing. This is the thing right here, is that, here's the kicker. The 7700K and the R7-1700, I'd recommend them both. Like, if someone bought one and said, oh my god, I bought a R7-1700, I'd say you made a good decision. If you bought a 7700K, I think you made a pretty good decision. Depends on what you're doing. If you're just gaming, it's looking like the 7700K is currently the champ. But, how many years is that going to change over? Like, in 2 years' time, is the R7-1700 going to be better for gaming? Well, in 2 years' time, we'll see. I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
The thing is, both these CPUs are performing really well. If we contrast that to the FX 8350, for example, if you bought an FX 8350, I thought you got shunted. At the time, and even now, the 4-core, if you look at a 4690K or whatever, 4670K, they used a lot less power. The motherboard's about the same. You actually needed to buy an expensive motherboard to overclock an 8350 properly, and an expensive cooler. I remember on the 4670K, you could get a cheap $30 cooler and overclock that thing pretty well. So if you bought an FX 8350, I felt that you made a poor decision back in the day. This time around, if you buy either CPU, you're making a pretty good decision. I don't think there's so little in it. And
Exactly.
And that's sort of like that's the conclusion that I've already done all the testing for the 3-part series, streaming, multiplayer, benchmarks, all that. I just got to make the video, which takes a lot of the time. But if you buy either of those CPUs, you haven't made a bad decision. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. I would agree with that for sure. I think the most impressive thing, I'm just about to start my Ryzen 5 testing, which will be quite exciting. I got a bunch of showdowns planned. But I think so far anyways with my Ryzen 7, and from what I've seen with the other people doing Ryzen 5 testing, they're extremely good value. There's just no way to get around it. Think about the amount of cores and threads you are getting for the price. That alone is a very good deal. I think you're correct in saying Kaby Lake is going to carry on, and people still will be buying 7600Ks, 7600s, all the rest of it. But Broadwell E is very much in trouble. Quite a few people already, yourself included, have switched from. You went from the 6800K to was it a Ryzen 1800X or the 1700? Which one did you switch to?
I switched to the 1800X. It was a review sample. The thing is, right, the R7-1700, it's making a statement. I said this too. Like, I was going to switch to Ryzen as a statement to Intel. I said to the people, I don't agree. I don't like how Intel's charging on the motherboard. They're charging the Z license. They're charging the K license. That's double dipping, and I've said this for so long. I disagree with it. And all Ryzen had to do was come with near performance to Intel. They didn't have to match them, and the IPC doesn't match Kaby Lake. But it comes damn close. It matches Broadwell E. All they had to do was match Intel's performance, and I was switching over. And the price performance is really damn good. The R5-1600, that's a different story. That's one is going to be the kick-ass CPU to get at that price point. There's no doubt about that one. Or as my old man likes to say, no bow to doubt it. But there's so what's going on here, right? I'm doing the 8-core versus Intel's 4-core first. And then I'm going to move over to the 6-core versus the 7600K versus an old school X5650. And now that's going to be a different kettle of fish. That will be more interesting with a more clear-cut recommendation there. I think the R5-1600 is going to be the clear winner there for numerous reasons. But as we stand with the R7-1700 versus the 7700K, the dual Xeons is pretty much, you're going to find that they're becoming obsolete, poor little things. As much as I love them, the R7-1700 still is trumping it, and then the 7700K is still that king in gaming. But so it's more of a, okay, both of these CPUs are good, but when we move down to the R5-1600, that's when things will get a little bit different, and you'll see that the R5-1600 is going to be the clear winner in a lot of cases in that category. So, and there's another thing I have noticed as well, some very different testing going on here. We got the R5-1600 even versus the 1800X or whatever. There's going to be I found some very interesting tests that I'm doing real world tests, and I've found some very interesting figures as well. So the R5-1600 may be the king of them all. If we're looking at pure price performance for enthusiasts, B350 motherboard, R5-1600, I think that one's looking like the winner of all. Intel AMD CPUs all combined. R5-1600 is getting my vote. It was my vote before it was even released, but there's further data to suggest that this CPU might be the one to get because of other reasons too. I'm not going to explain that until I release the video. If I say why, people will start doing their own tests, and then I'll lose all the views. I want to get some views. Come on. I want to get some views. I want to get some love.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head. By the way, Brian, everyone's saying audio is perfect.
Great.
Yeah, so the thing is that that you guys need to remember, for the same price as a single 6800K, you could get the 1600, which does come with a cooler, a decent cooler as well. You can overclock with that Wraith Spire cooler just fine, and a B350 motherboard. So you could have the CPU. Remember, the 6800K doesn't come with a cooler. You could get the Ryzen 1600, a B350, a good one, and of course it comes with the included cooler, and you would probably come in cheaper than just buying the 6800K. That is some pretty amazing undercutting from AMD, and I just have to say, it is very enticing for a lot of people out there. I run Broadwell E, I run a 6900K, and honestly, I can't say I would recommend it to anybody now. If you're looking for an 8-core CPU, get that Ryzen 1700 and overclock it, or if you're not comfortable with overclocking, then just get something like the 1700X, 1800X, and just use that, because they're just phenomenal. They're just such good value, and the productivity, which is what really counts for me anyways, and I guess I speak for Brian as well, the render times, if we need to go redo a video, you might have to render the same video 2 or 3 times. That amount of time does add up. Now, we don't just, I speak for myself, maybe Brian does, but I doubt it, is you don't just set it to render and then just sit there and wait. You're doing other things at the same time, but it's always nice to have those fast render times. I don't think anyone would say that's a bad thing at all. So the 1600, extremely good value. I just think it's absolutely phenomenal, and I will be doing 2 lots of testing. I'll be testing all 4 Ryzen 5 CPUs, but I'll be doing 2 of them with core-to-core comparisons, and 2 of them as price-to-price comparisons, and we can take those results and go from there. But no, very good value, especially now. The 1600, man. The fact that you can build a workstation, like a good workstation PC, on the cheap now. It blows the 7700K out of the water in terms of productivity. So it's pretty awesome, man, considering how much cheaper it is.
It's actually blowing it out in some tests. I'm doing some real world tests. The 1600 is beating even the 1800X in like a few little tests that I'm doing here. So I'm going to present that. I'm going to present that in a separate video. But again, I'm getting to the bottom of this now. I'm sick of all these fanboy wars out there. This, that. A lot of what we're seeing with discrepancies too is, of course, the game developers and driver implementation as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for what it's worth, the R5-1600, it's impressing me that much more. The more time I spend with it, the more time I just get to know it, get to know its feelings, get to know what's sad about, what it's happy about. And of course, you said it needs to be coupled with a good motherboard. I've got the bottom of the barrel B350 motherboard. Drop some MOSFET heatsinks on it, and it's performing really well. So that's what I'm liking for those price performance enthusiast heads out there. Ryzen's really hitting the mark because they're not charging you overclocking tax. They're not charging you motherboard overclocking tax. A lot of those taxes have been dropped. And I think it's a message to Intel. Intel needed to stop doing this. I think if Intel just charged on the motherboard, for example, they would have been fine. I don't see the need to charge double dip. That was what really hit enthusiasts. And then, of course, the thermal paste, that was another hit. There's a lot of things that and now Ryzen sort of picked up on, and they're gaining a lot of momentum from the real enthusiasts, from the fans. Of course, I always keep my results straight down the middle. I'm always just going to say, look, this is what's best for this. I really don't have any care about loyalty to any one brand, and that's never going to change. But I know there's guys who out there who are pro AMD, and they love AMD. It's very strong. And a lot of these guys are my friends on Twitter and whatnot, and they're really cool to talk with. The problem is, I think there's a lot of problems at the moment, though, is there's this massive, there's the rabid fanboys, and these guys are going crazy the moment you say something even just slightly against Ryzen. It's just, at the moment, it's insane at the moment. And I think a lot of channels are getting frustrated with it, but I just ban. If I get some guy calling me an idiot, just straight up ban, if that's his first sentence. you're an idiot. Ban. See you later. And that's the problem at the moment. And that's what I've been talking to a lot of people behind the scenes. The problem is that a lot of us are pro Ryzen, and so a lot of it now, we're recommending Ryzen, but the problem is there's a lot of results that are coming out that are too biased. They're just too out the top, and that goes against what a lot of us reviewers are about. We're about just calling it straight down the middle, That's
it. It's not really about being. It's not being pro Ryzen or pro AMD and pro Intel. I'm just pro whatever's good. If it's good and puts up good numbers, comes in a good price, of course I'm going to go for it. Someone said in the comments, they said you still got those SLI taxes on the X370.
Yeah, they're still there. Very true.
I suppose, yeah, that's correct. But at the end of the day, from personal experience anyway, many of us, I would say the vast majority of users, the vast majority use a single graphics card. And any good tech reviewer will tell you that you always want a single powerful graphics card over two. But yeah, you technically are, you're correct, but I don't think that's as much of going to impact many people as Intel's overclocking tax with the certain boards and the K series chips. I think that's much more impactful for people over the SLI tax.
SLI tax is true, man. It exists, and that's why further a reason to get a B350. So, also another thing about Ryzen too is it can support 64 gigabytes of DDR4 memory. I've got it running in my system dual channel at 2933 confirmed. So don't be afraid to pull the trigger on a 4K workstation with Ryzen as well. It's doing extremely well. So anyway, we'll move on to the first topic because we're going to be talking about Ryzen a little bit anyway. But Microsoft has done what is expected. The creators update has rolled out, and a lot of people are asking me for an optimization guide. I'm going to do one after I get a lot of my crucial testing done. There's a lot of testing I still have to do, and I've talked with other YouTubers. It's creating a lot of headaches. The creators update is causing a lot of headaches. So I'm actually even scared to update to it at the moment, at least until I get all my apples to apples testing done. And you were telling me it's 1 FPS on your GTX 10.
So I got the creators update yesterday, and I have the Gigabyte Aorus Extreme Edition 1080 Ti in my rig right now, and I went to do the creators update, and I done all my testing on the 1080 Ti for my showdowns. Of course, the next one coming up, they're all done before I did the creators update. I wouldn't do it afterwards. It's not fair. Anyway, so I decided to do it, and so it goes to reset to do the update and stuff. Then it was just blank screen, and I couldn't bring it up. I tried reset, and the BIOS screen wouldn't even come up, all this stuff. I took the 1080 Ti out and put my 1080 back in, and then it was fine. So when you do the creators update, it'll bring you to a blue screen, and then it needs to restart about 2 or 3 times while it does all the updating stuff, and then it'll chuck you back into Windows. But from me personally, having the 1080 Ti, and for some bizarre reason, it would blank screen after that. Maybe it's something to do with the GPU. Maybe Titan XP guys, big P, I suppose you'd say, might have the same problem. But yeah, really, really strange. Chuck the 1080 in, and it was just fine. I did notice that the drivers, I had to reinstall all my Nvidia drivers after the creators update because it just went a whole lot of crazy after I got back into Windows. There must have been some issue going on there because my screen went down to like 720p or something, and there was all funny stuff going on, and yeah, so I had to reinstall all of that. But yeah, it is quite dodgy right now. For what I've seen, yeah, you get game mode, and I turned it on. Okay, so I'll just say I only did one test, and with the 1080, and all I saw was 1 FPS extra with game mode on. Now that was a synthetic test as well, and that was just a single test I did last night. So obviously we'll need to cover this more, but if that's in a 1080p synthetic test, if 1 FPS is all you're going to see, I would expect a bit better. Maybe it's going to help more with things like latency, I guess, maybe for online gaming. Maybe that's what they're really targeting with game mode. Of course, there's all the streaming stuff now from Windows, which you can also use, broadcasting from Windows and all that. That's quite cool. You got do some 3D stuff in Paint now, which is quite interesting. And there's a whole bunch of updates for Microsoft Edge for any of you guys out there that use that. No comments there.
Yeah, so, it's just for me with my schedule, dude. I do not need any problems at the moment. Like, the last thing I need to do is diagnose problems. Steve from Hardware Unboxed, he told me he's rolled back the creators update. He actually rolled it back. He got fed up with it. He was trying to benchmark, just coming into a plethora of problems, like just so many problems, one after the other. He just rolled it back. After hearing that, I'm like, yeah, damn, you know, like, Steve has the cleanest install of Windows I would know. Like me, I have a real clean install of Windows. I cut all the crap out of it. And of course, there's a performance benefit to be made. I actually showed this on a live stream when I was overclocking my 7700K. I think it was 5.1 gigahertz. And we did the before and after Cinebench. And I was like, oh, I want to break 1100 Cinebench points. And so I optimized Windows quickly on a live stream, just optimizing Windows. And yeah, we got like a 1 point something percent increase in performance. And that was just funny. Like, so it's probably the same thing. And that's why people, I guess, like want me to like optimize Windows so I can make it more snappier, give them a little bit of a performance boost. But again, I'm scared to do it at the moment because I don't want any problems with all the stuff I've got to get through, all the videos I've got to get through. So
you don't. So just be aware of that. The black screen thing, if you're getting that, and to you guys out there as well, the viewers, if you try to do the creators update, I mean, unfortunately, most of you guys probably don't have a spare GPU, although you might have integrated graphics. Obviously, I'm on Broadwell E, so I don't have that luxury. But you might have to do that if you're experiencing that issue, because it is a very, very strange one to come across. But yeah, it does seem very hit or miss right now with the creators update. So yeah, be very wary of it before you decide to do it.
Yeah, there is problems, and there's just, from what I gather this time around, there's a lot of hit and miss feedback. As opposed to the last update, I didn't really hear anything bad about the last update that came through, the anniversary update. When that came, it was, the problems were really isolated. So it was like a guy with 5 monitors who had some problem with this little setting. It wasn't going to affect benchmarking and whatnot, but Steve was telling me certain games just won't even, it'll crash. Games will crash, this and that. So it's crazy what the creators update's doing. So I would not recommend updating at the moment. That would be my personal recommendation until Windows decides to stop making the public beta testers. I guess that's just a trend that's running through the industry at the moment. Hey, why should we spend money on beta testing when we can just get the people to do it for nothing? Like,
it's such a bad mentality though.
Oh well, that's the way the world works. And it's just why do something when you can get someone else to do it? You know, so that's there we go. So that's the creators update, guys. I don't recommend updating to the moment. If there is, once the problems settle down, I will get another PC to update to it. Say I've got a build coming this month. Actually, I've got a build coming this month, a used price performance build. I'll probably upgrade to it on that, and then maybe talk a little bit about experience some of the problems, and if it's ready for an optimization guide, then I'll do one. So, but don't worry, there will be an optimization guide coming. It's just when I would recommend people updating to the creators update. So next topic we got here, though, again, Microsoft's back on the back in the news. They're blocking Kaby Lake and Ryzen PCs from Windows 7 and 8 updates now, like just straight up blocking it. If you've got one of these CPUs, you're blocked. What do you think about that?
Well, that's, yeah, I think no one is particularly surprised. I think a lot of people saw this from a mile away, but yeah, Microsoft is really forcing people onto Windows 10, for better or worse. Personally, as an operating system, I actually really like Windows 10, which seems to be like blasphemy within the community. But this isn't a good thing, though. You shouldn't be forcing people to the operating system. Before, when it was still a free update, then I could understand it's a bit more. It's still not cool, but it was. I don't know. I mean, Windows 7 runs out of support in 2020 anyway, so I suppose most people need to start at least thinking about upgrading to Windows 10. But if you're on Kaby Lake, then it looks like you're going to have to, or if you're on Ryzen, it's now as well. But yeah, what do you think? Are you a fan of Microsoft forcing everyone to good old Windows 10? Windows 10 or bust?
Again, like my favorite was Windows 8.1. I liked 8.1. I liked the way once you changed it and tweaked it, I thought it was the best OS. Now Windows 10 is based on the same kernel, but the problem is they are introducing all that telemetry and whatnot. So I liked 8.1 the best. I know a lot of people like 7, especially competitive gamers. 7's still the go-to from what I hear for a lot of competitive gamers. And now that's pretty annoying, especially for those guys who like to play competitively. Yeah. What else to say? You're just taking away options that people like. And it's just, there's nothing but stupidity. I mean, if people want to use Windows 7, Windows 8.1, especially if they paid money for them. I mean, I know some people don't pay money for them, but especially if people paid money for these OSs, you're just, essentially screwing them over. I guess Microsoft's being racist towards Kaby Lake and Ryzen. And same with the Windows 10 Creators Update. That's racist towards the 1080 Ti, right?
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. Yeah. It's interesting as well that we both feel so differently about this, because I actually really didn't like Windows 8 or 8.1. If I can go back and list them in terms of what they were like when they first came out, and to use them for, say, the first 12 months after they came out, I would probably say Windows 7 would still be my all-time favorite, probably followed by Windows 10. I really enjoy Windows 10 actually, and then I would put my number 3. I'd have to say Vista, which is very unpopular to say, but I had quite a powerful computer back then, back in the old good old Core 2 Duo, Core 2 Quad days, and Vista was very good. I had Vista Ultimate, which was really nice, and that was a great operating system. So back then, if you had an underpowered PC, it was a horrible system because it was so heavy, but it was still. Yeah, a lot of people consider Windows XP the best. I can see why that is, but personally, out of all of them, Windows 7, that was just a good all-round solid operating system to follow up Vista, which was very heavy. That it was much lighter, which a lot of people liked. That was probably the biggest benefit of Windows 7. Windows 8 was better as well. You got those fast boot times and stuff like that over 7, which a lot of people liked. Many of you probably don't even remember that, but that was a big thing when it first came out. So yeah, but it's usually just personal preference. Again, we all like different things.
You had
the necessity to basically run starters back with 8.1 was a big. Did you run that with your 8.1, the starters back thing? So you had a normal start menu, or did you actually like the tile thing?
Yeah, I ran Start Menu X, so I ran a custom start bar, of course. But that's what you had to do. You had to give Windows 8.1 a chance. A lot of people just upgraded. They didn't know what they were doing. They were in disarray. They were like, not going back to Windows 7. That was the feeling that people got. They just hated it, so they just reverted back straight away. And so, of course, Windows 10 brought that start bar back, so adoption was very easy for Windows 7. But once you gave Windows 8.1 a chance, a proper chance, you realized there were benefits over Windows 7. I thought, the scheduler was better. I thought you could install many things at the same time. I don't think you could do that at Windows 7. Like you could install many applications at the same time on Windows 8.1. I don't know if you could do that on Windows 7. I just remember just jumping in and setting up Windows 8.1 once I knew how to set it up was much quicker than Windows 7, just for getting all my programs installed. It was sort of like it was more multi-core friendly, if that was the way to say it, with Windows 8.1. Yeah. And also I thought subjectively gaming was smoother on Windows 8.1 than Windows 7. That was something that I thought. Of course, it's a subjective thing, so I don't really talk about it much. But Windows 8.1 became my favorite OS because it just never crashed on me. It just it was a breeze after you tweaked it and after you did what you had to do with it to get it running properly. So
yeah, I think a lot of people, I do know what you're saying. They really had to give it a try, and I did. I ran Windows 8.1 on my last rig and Windows 7 on my rig before that. So yeah, you really had to. I think a lot of the people that didn't like it probably tried it out once. Like you said, they did the update, they got confused. I will admit, it would have been confusing to a lot of people, especially people that aren't as tech savvy, at first anyway. But yeah, or they tried it out at a store, at a friend's place, on a friend's computer or something, and they hated it. And I think that's the thing, is you really have to have tried it. I've run all these operating systems going back to XP for on my personal computers for at least like 2 years. So I think I had a really good time to see all the updates, see how it's progressed. But I remember back in the XP days talking to older people I knew at this computer place I used to work at, and I was telling them when Vista was about to come out, and they were saying, why are they bringing out Vista when they haven't even sorted out XP yet? And that's like the mentality that stayed on, is everyone, Windows 7's about to come out, and they'll be saying, well, Vista isn't even sorted out yet, or, you know, that trend's just continued over the years, and that was way back in like the early 2000s. So yeah, Microsoft has just been doing that a long time. But yeah, back to the topic. Yeah, this does suck in a lot of ways for a lot of people out there.
Well, yeah. Skylake's still going to be fine. That's what we're seeing. Skylake is still...
Skylake is still fine. Yeah, and I think you can still get away with it. But it probably wouldn't be ideal. So you guys out there might have to just take the plunge and go to Windows 10.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the Ryzen R5-1600X. We're going to put up Steve's review here from TechSpot. Steve from Hardware Unboxed Spot. And yeah, I guess you really wanted to talk more about the Ryzen R5-1600 and 1500X. And I guess you can shoot your thoughts as well. I think this is a really good segment. Again, I guess we can go into more detail of why the R5-1600 is going to really shine in this segment. And even the 4-core as well from AMD, because once you start getting into this segment, you've only really got the 4-core overclockable CPU from Intel bringing any competition. That's only in gaming. And, you know, again, 4 cores, 4 threads, that's a limitation there coming into the future. So that's where the R5-1600 is really starting to shine out. And of course, those lower competitive products that aren't overclockable are going to fall behind the Ryzen CPUs because the Ryzen CPUs are overclockable. But what I guess. Well,
but yeah. With this article, basically all I want to do, I know we already talked a bit about Ryzen 5 already, but a lot of people out there, both fans, viewers, and tech reviewers, tech YouTubers, have generally, because I haven't done my testing yet, and so I'm still trying to stay as open-minded as possible, and I've been watching a ton of everyone's reviews, from Brian, Steve's, Jim at Dord TV, everyone's opinions to try see what they all think. And it seems interesting because when I was talking to Steve on Skype the other day, I was saying a lot of people really like the 6 cores, the 1600X and the 1600. But there's quite a few reviewers out there that aren't fans of the quad cores, the 1500X and 1400. And Steve basically said to me, he's like, I don't understand why that is, because he thought they were, you know, just fine. Especially with the costs they're coming in at, the price point they're coming in at. But it seems like a lot of the people in the other tech YouTubers, and not a lot, but some of them, don't really like the quad cores so much. So that's quite interesting that we're seeing basically universal praise for the 6 cores, but then it's a bit more hit or miss with those quad cores.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Like, I'll chime in and give you my opinion here. I'm actually on that boat of I don't really like the 4 cores. I'm agreeing with the people who don't like the 4 cores that much and like the 6 core. And it's mainly like you look at the price performance and where it's at and what you're getting with the R5-1600. And once you buy your motherboard, your memory, your graphics card, you're really looking at only a little bit extra money to get those 6 cores in there. And that's 50% more CPU, 50% more CPU for your money on an extra, whatever it is, 2, 3, 4, 5% of your whole budget on the system. That's why a lot of people are gravitating towards the R5-1600. It's just such a good buy out of all the AMD CPUs. It's relevant now. It will be relevant for the next couple of years. And it just trumps the 4 cores, even on AMD's own CPU lineup in terms of value for money when we start to factor in other cores. Even when we compare it directly in price performance to the 4 cores, it's just killing it. It's absolutely killing it. Of course, you've got the cache rate. You've got more cache there available to the CPU cores. On some of it, I think the 1500X actually has the most available per core, yeah? But as you go down to 1400, that's actually been cut in half. So I think a lot of people like where the 1600X is at. How much is it over? I mean, how much is the 1600 over the 1500X? What's the price differential there? Like $40 or something?
In New Zealand, they're coming in. They're quite good price. So your 1600 will set you back 350 New Zealand dollars, and the 1500X will be 310. So it's 40 New Zealand dollars. More expensive, the 1600, and then the 1600X is 420. So that's $70 more for the 1600X over the 1600, and of course the little 1400 is $280. So it is $30 less. So you're seeing price wise in New Zealand, it's very good. The fact you can get the 1600 for $350, which means it's almost did the same, I believe, as the 7600K off the top of my memory. Let's have a look here. Yeah, so the 7600K right now is on special for 360, but it's usually 366. So in New Zealand at Playtech anyway, it's pretty much the same price. You can either get a Ryzen 1600 or a 7600K, and they're almost exactly the same price there. So that's pretty competitive. But yeah, it does beg the question. You are right. The 1500X only being $40 cheaper. I mean, would people really think like, oh, that extra $40, I could go from a quad core all the way up to a 6 core? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And there's 6 useful cores, as we've seen in the productivity benchmarks. They're making a difference. These cores are actually making a big difference. So that's what I mean. Are you going to not take that plunge? You know, and then I was talking with this about to Steve on Skype, and his argument was, well, you can get the cheap 4 core, but I don't think the cheapest 4 core's out yet. The 4 core 4 thread. And
those are the R3s, yeah.
Yeah, and you can update later. That's a good argument too. You can update when the overclocks get better, because this is going to be the architecture I believe AMD's implementing for the next 3 years. So that argument's valid as well. And that's why I like that. That's what I mean. Everyone's got different opinions, and I love it now. As long as, like, if someone's got a different opinion to you, and this is something that the tech community needs to learn in general. If someone has a different opinion to you, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. And you don't have to go shoot them down and call them an effing idiot and all this. That's what I'm really, I guess this year it's hitting harder than ever. I guess the amount of just toxic comments and arguments is through the roof. Like, it's insane. Oh,
it's shocking.
Yeah, it's shocking. It really is. Like, I got into tech when I was like a little teenager. It was so good. Everyone was helping people out. If you didn't understand something, someone showed you the light. Someone showed you the better way. So really, I don't know what's going on now. Like, it is a scary place to be in. I mean, I don't really care. It's the internet, right? The internet's toxic in general, but I don't know. I thought the tech community would never have this kind of crap coming into it, but it does look like it's just increased. It's just like overload. You can't do anything about it now, you know? you can't.
Yeah, you're certainly right. I think the other thing is what Jim mentioned in his video was quite good. He said he was basically not too happy with the quad cores, not for the fact of the value they're coming in at, but more the fact that it's still a quad core. And his point was basically like, hey, we've been on quad cores for so long now, going all the way back. And he does make a really good point. I mean, how many Intel quad cores in the gaming lineup anyway? we've just been doing this for years, and people say, well, quad core is enough, you only need 4, and that's, you know, that may be valid, but at the same time, he has got a good point in that shouldn't have there been some progression? I know Intel's idea has always been you want faster cores rather than more cores, but his point, which you may disagree with, is that we should have been progressing up to 6 cores, and that's why he was saying his recommendation, just like yours and many others, was to go for that 1600 over the 1500X. Because, you know, it comes with a cooler and it's 6 cores, 12 threads, and all the rest of it. And his thinking, at least from memory, was that that'll be better moving forward, because he thinks, as the point he's tried to prove, or he's talked about multiple times, is that going forward, there'll be better utilization of those 6 and 8 core CPUs. So I think that's a good point there, and I have talked to him on Twitter about it. Me and him talk sometimes now, and he does make quite a good point there. So 4 cores is probably still enough, for sure. But moving forward with these changes now, especially with Kaby Lake X, or Skylake X, I should say. We might be seeing that there might be a trend now, so it might start progressing up to those 6 cores and 8 cores.
I think 8 threads, if you got 4 core 8 threads, that's going to be still very relevant for years to come. I think 4 cores 8 threads is going to be
4 core 4 threads.
Yeah, so 4 core 4 threads might start to phase out a little bit, but even then, man, I've been on the camp when it comes to technology, when it comes to personal life and life goals and all that stuff. Of course, you have to think for the future, of course. But when it comes to tech, I'm one of those guys who likes to live for now. I mean, really, if you compare this hobby, this enthusiast hobby, like technology, to cars, let's take a look at cars, man. I remember when I was young, dude, I was just working to fix my car. Like, it was such an expensive hobby. Cars were expensive. Tech's not that expensive. When we contrast to that, like a $200 CPU is not that expensive when we contrast it to like a $2,000 set of mags on your car. So really, to be an enthusiast in tech, it doesn't cost a whole lot. Of course, there's always going to be these companies dangling, tech like Titan XPs in front of your face, and just don't buy that. It's just a complete rip-off. But when it comes to the actual enthusiast stuff, I think it's a fair game to get into, and I like to live for the now. So the now is still 4 cores 8 threads. I think that's the best at the moment, like for gaming. My tests are confirming that, but what are we looking at in the next few years? I don't know, and honestly, I don't really care a whole lot, because it's not such an expensive hobby. It's not like it's a life decision. If I'm $100 is not like, oh my god, I bought an R7-1700, and it's going to be more future. Or I bought a 7700K. Am I going to be shafted in a couple of years' time? It's like, in a couple of years' time, I'm pretty sure that 7700K will still be relevant, but there'll be the next CPU out from AMD and Intel. There'll be the new technology out. The Ryzens will probably be overclocking to 5 gigahertz in the next 2 years, and they'll have a cheaper SKU. Same with Intel. They'll probably have their 6-core, 12-threaded enthusiast latest IPC lineup, their main consumer, sorry, not the X99 platform. They'll probably have their consumer CPU out. So who knows? When the future comes, we'll review it, and then we'll see how good it is. Again, we don't have those crystal balls, guys, and
it's easier for us because we're, like, under the term I like to use, creators who game, because we're doing like that 50-50, or maybe these days we do a little bit less 50% gaming, more like 70-30 productivity, 70% productivity. Because we're doing that, I think it makes it easier for us, because we're always going to be trending towards the 6 and 8 core CPUs. I doubt any tech reviewer out there, any of the bigger guys anyway, is running, say, a quad core CPU. Not because they probably have anything against it, it's just they need those cores. People like you see Jay, who's gone over to Ryzen now and stuff, obviously Brian as well has gone to Ryzen. We need those cores, so it makes it a lot easier for us, because we're always going to go, I'll never go down to a 6 core, less than a 6 core. I'll always go 6 or 8 core now. because we need it. That's all there is to say. So,
but that's the funny thing though. I was testing the 7700. I used it as my main workstation for about 2 weeks. So this is why I'm getting a good understanding of where the strengths and weaknesses are and what tests I'm doing and looking out for what. Honestly though, the way the Premiere Pro or the whole Adobe suite, the way it works is that you actually don't need more than a 7700K. Of course, your final render times, you've got a bit more headroom the more cores and more threads you have, as it doesn't fully utilize them. So you can do other things while you're rendering. 7700K, you're dead in the water. If you're rendering a video, you've got to go AFK because it's just utilizing all those threads, and you'll have a really laggy experience. But again, they all complete the video in around about the same time. I've got the figures, like I was writing down the figures here. I think it was like I did this 20-minute render, CPU intensive. And they're all scoring in a similar bench ballpark. Like we got 29 minutes on the 7700K. I think it was like 26 minutes on the 1700. No, 1700 scored 24 minutes, so it was actually quite a bit faster. The 1600 was 26 minutes, so it's all falling in the same ballpark. Obviously, the R7-1700 did score a victory there, which was really good. So again, for what I need, the R7-1700 is the best. But again, and this is where it comes down to, if you bought a 7700K and you're doing a bit of productivity, but you're gaming competitively and you need the highest FPS, 7700K is going to provide that. So we're falling in this ballpark of where one is not falling so far behind the other. It's not like it's the end of the world, as opposed to when we looked at those FX 8350s back in the day, man, they were getting crushed. You know, like in some tasks, they were just getting clean cut crushed. Like absolutely, dominated. So it's good to see that 1700's coming out ahead in some things, and it's still very competitive in other things. So, I don't know. We're just
we should probably what was the next article we had here?
Well, we're going to talk about the Steam hardware surveys, because I was a little bit shocked. Like I was a little bit shocked when I saw this. We got the authentic AMD CPUs and the Intel CPUs. It was like the AMD CPUs last month. That was when Ryzen was released. It went down 1.46%. Like I just find that hard to believe. What was going on here? Obviously, I'll wait for the April and May figures. Hopefully, these numbers are up, and they're up quite a big amount. But wow, like, you know what I mean? That was really crazy to see. So what is all this craziness going on? Like, who's actually buying these CPUs? You know what I mean? Like, where's all the, like, there's so much hype out there. There's so much, you put out a Ryzen video, it's going to get a lot of views and a lot of likes. But when we got the data here, it's like, who's buying these CPUs? And March is already looking like an abysmal month for AMD, poor AMD. They've gone down 1.46%. And that
this will go up though over the next few months.
I'm hoping it goes up by quite a lot. I hope it goes up by quite a lot, to be honest. I mean, Ryzen's a good product, but
oh, certainly. I think it will start to go up over the next few months. But at the same time, the people watching our videos are usually always enthusiasts or people that want to be aware. But I think the vast majority of people who will just be buying, say, pre-built systems or going into a store to buy a new, get a whole bunch of parts together to build a rig, I think those people still just buy Intel. They're probably like just heard from someone, you should buy Intel, or they go into the store and the people in the store recommend it, or whatever it is. I just think that
retailers, I believe, consumers, retailers are getting kickbacks too to push Intel. I believe that's a real thing too. So
I haven't personally witnessed that or heard that, but I would say that this isn't the enthusiast, although you would expect over the next few months from the enthusiast, they will make a little bit of a dent in it. So I would expect at least it wouldn't be negative. It would be maybe plus 1% or something. But yeah, Intel's still very, very strong in that area. And maybe when people start moving over workstations, that might help a little bit to Ryzen as well. If they want to build more workstation PCs for cheaper, then that might make a little bit of dent. But this is taken from Steam, so obviously you wouldn't see those guys. You wouldn't see it there. So this is just from gamers, which is what you guys have to remember.
But the G4560 still. The G4560 was a pretty good. It's pretty good, man. The G4560, I'm gonna give that credit. That's a solid CPU for how cheap it is, and for how cheap you can put together a real budget gaming PC. So I want to see AMD release a competitor to that, because that's dirt cheap. Comes with a cooler, like $60 CPU with a cooler, and will play games really well. So especially those, Overwatch, League of Legends, CS:GO, it'll play it with good frame rates, and of course you're getting warranty on new stuff. So I'd say the G4560 has a lot to do with this percentage change here. That's for sure.
Yeah.
As you can see in the actual clock speeds, look at that, 3.3 gigahertz to 3.7. That's exactly where the 4560 is lying. So that's where it's sitting. So I guess some people pulled the trigger on the 7700K and the 7600K too, but I'm waiting to see this data change around a bit. Hopefully the R5-1600 really brings it to the market. Anyway, I was quite surprised to see those figures. Sorry. So now we've got the RX 570 and the RX 580. There's been a presentation. Someone leaked some slides. Pretty crazy. I guess they can see where he was sitting, so they're going to know who leaked these slides out pre-NDA. So someone's just like, hey, I was sitting here. They probably get the camera out. Who was sitting there? Now we know exactly who was releasing this information. But yeah, so it's looking like it's a straight rebrand with the RX 5 series, the 570, 580, just higher clock speeds, and of course we're getting a 6+6 pin connector on the 570, and it looks like a 8+6 on the 580. So yeah, I mean, we've already talked about this last week, but what do you think about this coming in with the 570 and 580, and of course the 560? It looks like they're releasing an even lower tier model, the 550 as well, which will be like for just entry-level gaming.
Yeah, so the step up here for the 480 to the 580 will be quite minimal. The difference here, there's not going to be much. It's just slightly better bench GPU. You're getting a bit of a bump up there in clock speeds, and the reference model will be running an 8-pin power connector as opposed to the 6-pin you got on the reference 480, if people are even going to run those. Most people are sticking on reference, so it won't really matter. So we're not seeing much there. The 570 will be a bit more of a jump up. Now, anyone with a 470 won't need to bother to upgrade, but it's more you're seeing a memory bump up, because it's going to be clocked at 7 gigahertz on the memory now, which is quite good, because before you got, I'm thinking 6.6, so 6,600 megahertz on the memory, I believe, from memory of the 470. So that's a little bit of a good jump up there in memory speed, and of course you get the clock speeds going up as well. So that'll be quite decent. Of course, if you're an overclocker out there, that probably won't make much difference to you. But for the people that don't overclock, which is a lot of them when it comes to GPUs, that'll be decent. But yeah, these, I don't think anyone was particularly surprised by this. This is what a lot of us expected in terms of what would come out. You're getting different SKUs as well. You get the 4 and 8 gig models of the 580, just like we saw with the 480, and with the 570, you'll be getting also the 8 and 4. 560, you get 4 and 2, and the 550, apparently you'll be coming with 4 and 2 gigabyte models. So that's quite interesting, given that the 1060 has a 3 gig model. So
I think a lot of people were hyping in the comments when we were talking about this last week. I think a lot of people were like, okay, if it's a rebrand but it comes in cheaper, then it's going to be really good. But what we're seeing here is the price is around $229 to $279 for the RX 580, which is looking like it's a little bit more expensive than the 480. Then again, the RX 470, RX 570, sorry. Is 170 to 230 US price range. So it's looking like it's just a straight rebrand, and possibly even a little bit more expensive, which is disappointing in this regard. So
yeah, you wouldn't hope it would be more expensive. It should be just the same price for a bit of a bump up. I think that would be okay. I mean, we're seeing clock speeds wise from the 480 reference 1266 to the 580's 1340. Non-reference models, that'll be different, because some non-reference 480s are already around that clock speed anyway. So you'd see maybe some non-reference 580s coming in at maybe 1400-ish. So that's decent. The 570 gets about a 40 megahertz bump up there, and clock speed on the GPU itself. Obviously, you get 400 megahertz bump up on the memory. So yeah, this will be okay. The introduction of the 550, as you said, that'll be decent for those people, for the entry-level people. Just another one to add to their lineup. But yeah, for the people saying no 590, that'll probably be what Vega will be. I'd imagine, unless they decide to go with a different naming scheme, the Vega GPU will be the RX 590, and there'll probably be another model. There'll be the cut down model will be like the 590, and then there'll be the 590X will be the more powerful one.
Yeah.
But we don't know yet, so we'll just have to see. But from what we're seeing right now, yeah, it's a rebrand. I don't think anybody would be surprised.
We're looking at the sales
relatively
here.
Same.
Well, we're looking at the sales here. The GPUs for like Nvidia is just all green. Like you're just seeing green numbers here. Look at that green plus percentages. And then you're seeing that the RX 4, I think it's the RX 480 RX 480 is the top selling graphics card from AMD, and it's like the 8th down on the list or something like that. It's not doing that well at all, like 1%. So it changed 0.19%. We look at all these Nvidia cards, they're selling 6 to 1. I mean, I'm surprised that the 750 Ti is selling so well. It must be like a third world country sellout or something, like, because that's what I mean. Like in third world countries, they do a lot of these cards that don't sell in the US and then like sell in Australia and UK and stuff. They get shipped to the countries and they get sold there because they just, and that's just a lot of times that's the way it works. But here we got the 1060, just it's beasting it. It looks like it's selling at double the pace of the RX 480, which is kind of surprising. But I guess people, that's what I mean. Like, I guess YouTube in itself is a small market. I guess people, the average guy going to the computer store doesn't even know about URI or even Jay's 2 cents or maybe someone that big. Like, they just go out and buy computer bots and they don't care. And they just play games.
Yeah,
it's
pretty phenomenal. More people buy 970s than 480s. So, what's even more phenomenal, if you go back to that article, was the one of the first slides they showed up there with all the cards. Their marketing. Look, they're comparing it to. It's very hard to read, but it says for the 580. I'm guessing that is on the very left. You can't read it, but they're saying 1.6 times higher versus the 380X. Why are they comparing it to a 2 generation back? Usually you compare it to the last generation, not the generation before that. The 570 2.4 times higher performance versus the R7-370. Why are you going that far back? Is it because if you tried to do it against the 480, you could only say, oh, it's 5% higher performance? I understand their marketing department was probably maybe a little bit desperate, but I mean that just feels, it just feels reaching. And I'm not trying to be mean to AMD. It's just like, wow.
No, you're just speaking your mind, man. I know. You're gonna cop someone.
Yeah.
So you're gonna cop some hate in the comment. Someone's gonna come in and just go crazy on their keyboard at you. It doesn't matter what you do. So like I said, you can't please all the people all the time, dude. So stop trying.
But it's true though. It's the point is that this, but it's not that. Yeah.
You can only please Kev.
It'll probably sell. Yeah,
You can only please some of the people some of the time. Okay.
Yeah, that's what they always say. So no, but I will be testing this regardless. So I guess I'll reserve my judgments until I start testing these out, which I should start testing next week, I believe. I will be starting all my 500 series testing. Most likely I'll test it against the 400 series, but against some Nvidia cards also.
But wouldn't this lead, like, after seeing this data, the RX 470, 460, and 480, I mean, I was hearing about AMD now magically coming from 20% to 30% market share. These numbers would suggest otherwise, like clearly suggest otherwise. This would suggest, like, wow, this would like clearly suggest otherwise with these numbers on Steam. So again, like these, because these are data. This is just data published by Steam. They don't give a crap. They've got no bias. They're just publishing the numbers. So we're seeing this, AMD's crawling back from 20% to 30%. This disagrees. This data here would completely go against that. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess it is just Steam, but you would imagine most of the gamers would be using Steam for at least some of their games. So yeah. Oh well.
So how are they I don't get where this 10% magically comes from in market. It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah. It's really not making any sense, because I'd say like every gamer I know has Steam. Every single gamer I know has Steam as well.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
Crazy results. Anyway, guys, we go on to the Vega here. Vega's getting talked up a lot, and then we've got the actual specs here. This is looking like it's confirmed now. The actual specs for Vega. We've got Vega 10. It's 14 nanometer. It's got the same amount of stream processors as the R9 Fury, and we're looking at like a 50% bump up there in teraflops, double the HBM memory. And also the memory bus has gone down a little bit. I guess that's not a big deal because of just how damn huge the memory bus was to begin with. I guess that's not going to be a detriment at all to performance. And the bandwidth is the same. So, and it's coming in with a lower power target there. So what are we looking at here? 2017, it's looking like it's launching at Computex. And do you think it's going to? And this is an interesting survey here. I voted. I'm just going to be straight up. I think it'll be on par with the 1080 at a much lower price. That was my vote. You got to hear the majority of votes. It'll be on par with the 1080 Ti. At
a lower cost.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to be on par with the 1080 Ti?
Nah, I mean, if I'm very hopeful, I would think it will come between the 1080 and the 1080 Ti, because remember, guys, there's quite a big gap there actually. Like the 1080 Ti is like 30% more powerful than a 1080.
Huge.
So that's actually quite a large gap between the 1080 and the 1080 Ti. So I would like it if it came in between the two, so it was maybe 15% faster than the 1080 but 15% slower than the 1080 Ti. However, it was coming in at, say, the same price as the 1080. That would be phenomenal. But in reality, I think it'll probably just be the same as the 1080. Maybe it'll be coming in at a lower price point. But, yeah, it's just going to be one of those things that we'll just have to see. The specs look promising. This looks very promising on paper. But I remember back, this is why I got a lot of apprehension here. And Brian was probably the same. When the Fury X came out, we were looking at the specs and we are going like, wow, that Fiji XT GPU, well, this is going to be powerful. This is going to kill the, what was it back then, 980 Ti?
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought, man, it's going to smoke it. HBM, we were a bit worried, though, that it only had 4 gigs of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we came out and then we all started testing it, and there's no doubt that the Fury X was powerful. It's still a powerful graphics card, but it just couldn't do it. It just couldn't dethrone the 980 Ti, and I think that was the main problem there. So this time round, I'm bringing all the hype down.
I've jumped off the hype train. Yeah, I think it'll probably most likely come in at about 1080 performance, but maybe it'll come in a bit cheaper. If we're lucky, though, yeah, it might be in between the 1080 Ti, and it comes in a 1080 price point. If that was the case, that would be absolutely phenomenal. That would be fantastic, and that would grab so much of the market share back. But Ryzen was good. Ryzen kind of lived up to the hype. I think that was good. But I don't see like how you've got still, it's GCN pretty much based at the core. It's still GCN. It's 4096 stream processors. We already know with the RX 580 that the max we're going to get out of this thing is 1400 megahertz. How is it going to beat a 1080 Ti? Please tell me how. Like this, from the 28% of people who voted, how is that going to beat? How is it going to be on par with the 1080 Ti? I just don't see it happening. Just from looking at logically, I just can't see it beating a 1080 Ti. I can see it, coming in between a 1080 and a 1080 Ti. Sure, I could see that, and that would be really cool. I think that would hit hard. But just from what we're seeing here with the specs, I just don't see it happening. Because
are we sure? Is it? Are you sure it's on the GCNA?
Well, yeah, it's GCN based, unless they're going to radically use a new architecture, which I'd love to see. I'm hoping they do, but I guess it's looking like it's the same cluster of stream processors on 14 nanometer, just clocked higher with more aggressive timings, this, that. So
the memory might help again. The HBM2, if it's as advanced as AMD's toting, but I mean, it's definitely going to have the memory bandwidth will be, well, we can see it's insane already at 512. So I mean, like, good grief, that's going to help things. But memory alone can't save you. The 1080 Ti, obviously as GDDR5X, the memory bandwidth there is very high also. So
well, they're saying it's based on the next compute engine, so NCU. So I guess it remains to be seen. We have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would be I would be very, very happy if it beat the 1080 Ti. It's not that I'm bashing AMD. That would be fantastic if it blew the 1080 Ti out of the water. And it was for the price of, say, a 1080. I would be so happy. I would probably chuck one in my personal rig. But the thing is that we have to get the hype under control and not let what happened to the Fury X happen again.
That's what I mean. But when we look at the specs here, when we look at the 4096 stream, it's got the exact same cluster of stream processors. When you look at Maxwell versus Kepler or whatever, the configuration was changed up. You know what I mean? Things were different. So it looks like it's going to perform better. But again, you're looking at that and you're like, okay, does that come from it just being clocked higher and having a lot more performance due to the 14 nanometer and having the higher clocks? How much of this how much of these teraflops is actually coming out of a new architecture? And honestly, it doesn't look like it's going to be a huge amount. That's just me being logical about it. So of course I've got to hand it to AMD, but this time around I'm sort of jumping off the hype train because we haven't seen much this time around. We have, they did show Vega. I think they did show Vega at one of the events with Doom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Vulkan. The video Linus made.
Yeah, and it was beating it was beating a 1080, but it wasn't beating it by worlds. Like the 1080 Ti will beat the 1080 in Doom by quite a lot. I was in Ultra, dude. Ultra settings at 4K. I was getting like 130 something FPS. 4K Ultra on Doom with the 1080 Ti Aorus. It was huge. So
yeah, exactly. So it should be interesting. They're saying it's coming with a limited edition reference liquid cooling design. So if you guys are curious about that, I imagine it would be very similar to the one they used on the Fury X. But of course, we'll hopefully get non-reference models as well, rather than the Fury X, which you just got that liquid cooled model. You had to drop down to the non-X Fury card to get all the non-reference, the Sapphire models and that.
We're going to cheer up a bit, but this time around, guys, I've jumped off the hype train here. So,
yeah.
So yeah, we got another thing brought up by a lot of people here is this whole AMD versus Nvidia graphics card with the Ryzen CPUs. We see here, Nantech did show, it's a good article here when they're pointing to Rocket League. Someone's like, oh, dude, I'm not watching your Ultimate Showdown because you use the 1080 Ti. It's like, well, you got to use an AMD graphics card. It's like, well, no, actually, a lot of the titles I tested were DX11. I did test the DX12 title, and it did perform really well on Ryzen with an Nvidia graphics card. And also, Vulkan performs extremely well with an Nvidia graphics card too on the AMD Ryzen CPU. So, again, I think the onus is falling onto the game developers too. It's not just, okay, people blame Nvidia, because we've got this result here where, okay, the Intel CPUs are performing better with an Nvidia graphics card versus a Ryzen CPU with an Nvidia graphics card. Then when you change it over to the Ryzen CPU with a Ryzen graphics card, it's performing in the similar league to the Intel CPUs. So that was pretty interesting to see. But then we look what Steve's done with his research. He tested Ghost Recon Wildlands. You look at this difference here with the RX 480 on the Ryzen CPU. It's performing a lot worse than an Nvidia graphics card with a Ryzen CPU. Can you see that? Just like those two results, you compare them there. The Ryzen CPU is performing a lot better in Ghost Recon Wildlands with the Nvidia graphics card. So that argument's kind of in a bit of, I think Mafia 3 too. Steve pointed to Mafia 3 as well. So Oh, I didn't hit it. I gotta hit the like button for Steve. Well, I didn't even hit the like button yet. What am I doing?
Oh,
What am I doing? What am I
Poor old
doing, man?
Steve.
What am I
No,
doing, bro?
it's interesting looking at this Antec article though. The
Look at that. Look at that. Mafia 3. Look at that. Yeah, Steve was right. He's telling me Mafia 3. Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
huge. That's huge. It's losing with an AMD graphics card. Now it's winning with an Nvidia graphics card. So yeah, I guess it depends on the game as well. It's not just the driver. I don't think Nvidia's out to purposely kill Ryzen CPUs or anything like that.
No, I don't think so.
Nvidia, if anything, would want their GPUs to perform better on a Ryzen CPU so they could sell more graphics cards. I don't think there's any funny buggers being played there. So
you'd hope not, and I don't think so. But the article's quite. Yeah. This article is a little bit. It is good. The point is, it's trying. You know, the point it makes is decent. But you are seeing in some of the tests, you have things like R9 Fury at 4K, and they're all scoring the same. But if you ever look, there's like things like the R5-1600 are scoring the same as like the 7600, and you know the 1800X and stuff. That's just a full-on GPU bottleneck there. Some of the RX 480 testing they did at 4K as well. You see them all scoring within like 1 or 2 frames of each other. That's within the margin of error, and that, once again, that would be a GPU bottleneck.
Would be but if we look at the 1060, but the 1060, it's a driver. Like it'd be a driver problem here with Rocket League. That's all.
Yeah, that's probably more the case. Although, you know. Yeah, that's probably more true because you're seeing in the 1060 at 4K, even then it's the Ryzens are dropping down. So there's definitely something going on. But of course, these are the teething problems that we've been talking about for like a month now with Ryzen. It is brand new. There's a lot of things that need to get sorted for it. And we're slowly getting through that list of like bugs and issues. It's getting ticked off one by one, getting better and better. But yeah. If I was someone going to buy Ryzen, I wouldn't let this put you off too much, as I imagine this will be addressed in the future. But if you're already running, or if you're going to be running an AMD graphics card with it, then it won't be a problem. If you're going to buy a 580 or something, or you got a 480 already, then yeah, it shouldn't be an issue at all.
Yep. So there we go, guys. It's going both ways. It's not just an Nvidia graphics card on an AMD CPU. And for what it's worth, I absolutely love playing games with the 1080 Ti on the Ryzen R5-1600. It's a butter smooth experience. It's absolutely awesome. Again, of course, you've got games like Wendell and Steve from Gamers Nexus, Wendell from Level 1 Techs. They're going on this massive witch hunt. Like, it's crazy with GTA 5. Like, they're going insane. They're going a little bit too far, but like, I think at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, this game wasn't optimized 100% for PC. There's going to be stuttering. There's going to be this, that. If you look at Fallout 4, same problem. You get those little stutterings and stuff. So I think the best way, instead of, trying to get to the why, it's like, well, the game developers just didn't optimize it fully for PC. When we look at games that have been optimized fully for PC, Doom, Overwatch, these games, they run just complete butter smooth on proper hardware. And that, again, that's because they were designed for PC. So I think, I don't know. But it's a long case. But I'm going to be making some of my own content on it. And I think if a game does stutter in the future and it's stuttering on a lot of different hardware, I think the only way to get around that is to say, hey, game developers, please try and release some updates for this. And furthermore, just make a guide on how to make it as smooth as possible. And then that's, I guess, how you get around it. Or just don't buy the game, which is another workaround too. So the last article we got up here is the 12-core 24-thread CPU has been an engineering samples with the codes have been spotted and video cards have deciphered it all, and
which is pretty impressive. But this is so a 12-core 24-thread, saying it's going to come with a 2.7 gigahertz base clock, 3.2 turbo. Or boost. This will be quite crazy if this is to come out. They're saying it's for servers and desktops. This would really, like the Ryzen 7's already, pretty much killed off Broadwell E, but this would just be the nail in the coffin. Because the 6950X would just be obliterated by this, I would imagine, given what we've seen from Ryzen 7. So, this could be quite crazy. if this is going to be coming out on the X370 AMD platform, yeah, this would be nuts, and it would, wow. Yeah, I would, if you're out there going to building a workstation, I would be not heading towards Intel anytime soon. Head towards Ryzen 7, but if you're wanting something just ridiculously powerful, then maybe wait for this behemoth of a CPU to come out. I mean, Jesus, 12 cores. The render times, if you're doing video editing or anything, would be insane.
It depends on the program, though. I'm finding after 6 cores, 12 threads, it really starts to drop down a lot. Though it has got
Vegas just loves it, man.
Yeah,
Vegas
it has gotten a bit better though. It
it.
has gotten a bit better with Premiere Pro, but it's still, they all fall. Like if you're doing, you should be using Premiere though. It's better. Vegas is good. Vegas is really good, but it really doesn't make a huge difference. I mean, someone like this would really want to actually get the 12 or 16 cores and fully utilize them, just like the dual Xeons. They really need to be utilized properly. Otherwise, for the majority, even for me, they're a waste. For a lot of people out there who are doing productivity, and so a lot of people on a workstation, I guess, it would be overkill. So I think the Ryzen R7-1700 is good, and it's very good for a workstation CPU. So again, these chips would be for people who need those extra cores, need those extra threads. I have to go back and retest on the dual Xeon rig in the games, because a lot of people are like, oh, but dude, Node 2 is probably just not working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable hyper-threading and revisit those games and see if it makes a difference. If I disable hyper-threading and then it's working on all 16 threads, then it's not a Node 1, Node 2 problem. So I'm going to actually go back and do that today and post it up on Twitter. So stay tuned on Twitter. I'll be posting an update to that. Let you guys know straight away. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, this core's coming, and it's going to obviously need a different motherboard socket, and it should have quad channel memory support. So it's going to be a great option for someone looking to utilize extra cores and threads than what Ryzen R7-1700 offers. So here we go here, guys. We've got the questions for the Tech Lounge. So got the questions, Q&A. We're going to start winding up the show. So if you've got questions, of course, then you can head on to the forums, techcity.tv/forums, and you can drop in a question for next week's Q&A. But we've got here, when you done your B350 overclock, how hot did your VRM MOSFET get? Not too hot. I put an active fan on there, and if you're on a B350, actually that's what I call it, nickname B350. Yeah, that's it. That's a good. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
It's a good name, isn't it? B350. So if you're on the B350, get an active cooling solution for your VRM, because hey, you've got generally less phases on the B350. And then secondly, you've got to, obviously they're going to get hotter, and sometimes they don't even have heat sinks on them. So if they don't have heat sinks, then you definitely, if you want to overclock, then definitely go out and get some heat sinks, put an active cooling solution on it, and get some good results from your B350. So next up, we've got here, nice question. I heard they get warm a lot. So he's never actually really looked into it until recently. He was getting up to 112 degrees. Ooh, that's with the stock heatsink. Okay, you got to tell me the exact motherboard, Dragon Kurt. What motherboard were you using? So that's actually pretty damn hot. I wouldn't want my VRMs running at 112 degrees C. Just not constantly anyway, especially on a CPU lineup and on a passive heatsink. So I'd suggest getting some active cooling on that and keep that VRM cool just for 24/7 stability. Obviously, heat kills PC parts, guys. Heat kills PC parts. Yeah. The hotter things get, the more likely they are to die. It'd be a direct correlation if you did some studies. This is just after years of experience with PC parts. The hotter things are, the more likely they are to die. So you want things running as cool as possible. So when it comes to next question, unless you want to throw in some extra insight, Kev?
No.
Again.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to bargain hunting builds, if the systems are not overclockable like the HPZ workstation builds, would that be a deal breaker to you even if it was a good price? With the old stuff, yes, because the overclocking potential there is so damn big. You're talking like sometimes you look at those Xeons, you're going from 2.66 gigahertz all the way to 4 point something. That's a 50% overclock. And not only that, everything else speeds up as well. It's more snappier. Games run higher FPS. And also it makes the CPU more relevant compared to today's products that are out there. So that's what I like about overclocking on the old school stuff. For me, it's generally I don't do the whole, if it's not overclockable, I don't even bother with it, especially with HP Z workstations and stuff like that, because a lot of the time you'll need a proprietary power supply which doesn't come with it, and they cost an arm and a leg. It's just a lot of time it's a waste of time for me. I don't even try to bother with it because I want to overclock. I want to get that extra performance to make the CPU more relevant. So anyway, so something to consider that I haven't seen discussed is that the R5s are different than the R7s in that there is an all-core boost that is much lower than the top clock speed. If any one core is incapable of stability at the top clock, it will limit manual overclocking to the lower speed of that one chip. Well, yeah, it should do, unless it's automatically crashing your computer for you. You wouldn't want to do that. So yeah, I imagine if it's auto overclocking all cores, it'll only overclock it to the max stable limit. Keep in mind though, it could be a buggy thing. When I do tests, I usually either test at stock speeds out of the box, or I just overclock. Manually overclocking, guys, is always the way to go. You want to manually overclock your gear. That way you know it's running at those speeds, you know it's stable at those speeds 24/7 for when you're doing your work. I haven't had my CPU crash once when I'm rendering. I haven't had it crash once in games. That's stability. So if you're overclocking and your games are now crashing as opposed to stock, then your overclock's not stable. Even if it crashes once every couple of days, it's still not stable. So you want to drop it down a little bit in speeds, or up the voltage a little bit more, depending on those levels. So last question we got here is, hey guys, hey man, what's up? Gert Tractor. I'm currently considering the upgrade to a Ryzen R5-1600 system this month and selling my 6600K Z170 motherboard and the cooler. I'll be reusing everything else, including the 16 gigabytes of Corsair 3000 MHz DDR4, which I think happens to be the exact same stuff that was sent in all the Ryzen review kits. I do music production and other creative endeavors, a lot of multitasking and a fair bit of gaming. To offset the lesser single core speed, I would ideally like to get the 1700 up to at least 3.9 gigahertz, hopefully higher. And I would like to be able to get the DDR4 speed up to that too. What do you think are the best B350 motherboards for overclocking? Also, I really would good BIOS level fan control. Oh, you would like, he would like to have BIOS fan control, as the fan software on my Gigabyte often needs resetting or reinstalling if there's a crash or Windows update. Another consideration is the number of USB ports, as I need quite a lot for all my audio and MIDI devices and peripherals. I would go for the X370 board, but they're all rather expensive. Many of the B350 boards look like decent matches for my current board and are much cheaper than the X370s. I'm not sure if there will be compromises in overclocking. There is compromise on a lot of B350s. I heard the MSI Tomahawk is the best way to go. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. The Tomahawk.
Yeah, good. I would recommend that also. That's a really solid board. I mean, if you're looking to get 3.9 out of a 1700, you should be able to. You really should, unless you're really unlucky. But then you'd probably only get knocked down to like 3.8 or 3.85. But you should be able to get at least 3.9. Most likely, if you get a decent one, you'll get 4 gigahertz out of it, and you'll be able to take your memory up to like 2933. So that would be just fine. But yeah, the MSI Tomahawk, that's really solid if you're looking for something with what's the issue? The BIOS fan control. It needs USB ports as well. Yeah, something like the Gigabyte B350 Gaming 3.
That's it, bro. Good answer.
Yeah, the Gaming 3 from Gigabyte, that one's pretty good as well. I'm hearing a lot of good things from people in the industry about that as well. So yeah, either of those would be really solid. Best thing to do is just look up reviews on sites like Newegg. You got all the user reviews there. You can just comb through those, and that'll give you generally quite a good idea about it. But I think the the Gigabyte B350 Gaming 3 is really solid. I've only tested the Asus B350 Prime Plus, and I thought that was horrendous, but maybe
That's
it's better
funny
now.
because, well, I've had a guy update to the latest BIOS when I got it, and it was like a 2-day release. So I've had no problems with any B350 motherboard I've used at the moment. They're all fine. I haven't had a problem personally with any of them. Yeah, I really think they're sort of hitting it up this generation. I think they're really, all these manufacturers are getting on top because of they don't want bad press. They don't want negative press. Oh my God, my motherboard doesn't work properly. It's bad. I don't think a lot of companies want that this time around. They can't afford that. It's getting so competitive. So I haven't had it, honestly, I haven't had any problems with either of these motherboards. I've got a Gigabyte here, a Gigabyte B350. I've got an ASRock K4, does well. I've got the Asus, and when I stuck the heat sinks on there and a fan on there, it does really well too. So I'm having no problems personally here. Honestly, if you're going from a 6600K and you've overclocked it, you're not going to, it depends on your GPU, but again, I don't really think you're going to see too much of a difference, like you'll probably get that whole system and be like, meh. Like you'll feel like, oh my God, I got 8 cores, 16 threads. I got 4 times the threads available now. Like that'll be a cool feeling, but it'll probably wear off after a few days, and you'll be like, okay, really, loading up games isn't faster, doing things isn't really a whole lot faster. So I'm just warning you, Gert Tractor. It's cool to upgrade and it's fun and all that, but for going from a 6600K that's overclocked to an R7-1700. Like, unless you are really going into the depths of productivity and utilizing all those cores and threads, I don't think you're going to notice too much of a difference there, because you do music production, and a lot of times those music production programs aren't optimized for 16 threads. I did the Mixdown, Presonus Mixdown, and that didn't utilize all the threads properly. It started to cave off after, I think, even possibly, I've got to do the benchmark again, but it did cave off definitely after 8 threads. It started to drop. So yeah, high cores, high clock speeds are still relevant. So yeah. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the show. Winding down, be sure to jump over to techcity.tv/forums if you've got questions for next week, and of course you can become a patron, because me and Steve from Hardware Unboxed, we're doing a live stream patron behind the scenes live stream every month. So if you want to join that, it's $1 a month and you'll get access to that stream, and that'll be really cool. So we'll be doing one of those this week, hopefully, and talking about Ryzen, talking about benchmarking, all that behind the scenes jazz. And yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this stream. Is there any closing out statements, Kev? Do you want to?
No, it's just this was really fun. Hey, everyone in the comments all said they'll be thrifty.
Oh yeah, B350, man. That's it. Oh, there's also another one too. There's also another one. When I was typing on my phone, the GTX 1080 Ti Aorus, the autocorrect changed it to the Airbus, and I think that's an awesome name. Yeah, it should be the Airbus. That's what it should be. So it's the Gigabyte 1080 Ti Airbus. So that's another one.
You
too.
Weren't kidding. You weren't kidding in your review when I got the Aorus, this 1080 Ti, the Extreme Edition out. When I was doing the unboxing video, I couldn't believe how heavy this card is, and it's huge. My goodness, it's massive, eh? Oh my
but the
God.
the power consumption is massive too. Let's not kid ourselves here. It is.
Yeah, I know.
It's like a 980 Ti overclocked to the rim and a 1080 Ti overclocked to the rim. 1080 Ti is drawing considerable amount of more power, like 70 watts more from the wall. That's quite a bit. Like, it's nothing to fret at considering how powerful the 980 Ti was. So it's no laughing matter. Like, that cooler's doing its job, man. And it kind of reminds me. It reminds me of the Lightning days when MSI released that Lightning cooler. That reminds me of that. It's huge. It's actually kind of relevant for this situation too. I really like what they've done with the Aorus. The cosmetics, that's not for everyone, I'm pretty sure.
A lot of people didn't like it.
But I'm telling you now, if you want to stick something in your PC and you want performance, man, does this thing perform.
Oh, the 1080 Ti is insane.
Well, it performs for, the Aorus performs for, or the Airbus, it performs for a few reasons. And that's because it's got the cooling there. It's also, like, when you ramp up the fans, it's not that loud. Like, I was surprised, 80%, it was actually bearable. I could game with these fans on 80%. It's nowhere near jet engine or anything like that. It's actually not even that noisy. And then, of course, you've got that power target, 150%, at least on the Extreme Edition. I haven't tested the other one, so on that note, I'm not too sure. But the Extreme Edition had a 150% power target, and that made a big difference for games. So you'll see it with other reviewers if they are overclocking these cards. And they're overclocking them pretty hard. So anyway, guys, we're going to wind up the stream. Kev's link to his channel will be in the description below. And we will catch y'all next week for a beautiful show. And I hope you all have a great Easter wherever you're at in the world. And again, I'll say it again. If you don't celebrate Easter, I hope you have a great time. And we'll catch you next week. Peace out for now.
See you guys.